The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Cube with Sister Shamiza.
Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're well, listening in from wherever you are this morning. It is the Urban Cube Show, brought to you on Inspire FM 105.1 FM. The time is 10 o'clock and it's Monday, 14th of October, and I'm Shamiza, taking you all the way up to 12 o'clock on a show full of quirky conversations with great creatives from locally, nationally and internationally on the show. But today we are not having anyone in the studio. So Facebook Live is on. You can still leave comments on the comment section, but our guests are actually over the phone this morning. And I'll be sharing who they are very, very shortly. Now, on today's show, I am really exploring the contributions of women and how women are really making their mark, in particular Muslim women. And the way I'm going to be doing that is, of course, having conversations with great guests who are really contributing and making a mark in every area of their lives. Now, on the show, I'm also going to be not just speaking to a mindset coach. I'm also going to be talking to a cardiac nurse specialist who's gone on to run her own aesthetic clinic. She's a blogger, a very successful blogger, and a mother of five. I'm also going to be joined by a guest who is doing research at Oxford University on the contribution of Muslim women and Pakistani women are making, and she's inviting the community of Luton, the women of Luton, to kind of engage with her research. And we're going to be having some Urdu Shairi on the show today as well. And I'm absolutely delighted to be introducing very, very shortly a poet who's making his mark across the international shores, as well as in England as well, who's going to be talking to us about the art form of Urdu poetry and the revival of that. This is all happening on the show today. Now, if you'd like to get involved with any of the conversations, I would love you to get engaged with us on the show today. And in order to do that, what you need to do is contact us on 07779 481822. Now, I want to ask you in relation to language, the power of communication, and especially the fact that we have a fantastic guest on the show today by the name of Taimur Rehman, who is also known as Qasid. Now, Taimur is an internationally celebrated Urdu literature, poetry narrator and writer from Pakistan. And as I've already mentioned, he's reviving the lost art form of the Urdu language. And what I want to ask you guys, if you're listening in and you're a parent, how important is it for you to encourage your children to speak their mother tongue, or in particular, the Urdu language? Do you converse with your children in the home in their mother tongue? Or do you speak English? Interestingly, whilst I was growing up, I was actually made to speak Urdu. My parents were very, very strict, and I'm really at home. I wasn't allowed to speak English, and I'm really, really glad that I was taught to speak Urdu, because that's actually really helped me in the future, and it's actually really encouraged me to kind of learn more about the arts and culture in Pakistan, and learn about, the poetry, so forth. So I'd like to find out from you guys, how important is it for you to engage your children in learning their mother tongue? It could be anything that you speak, but in particular, I'm asking about Urdu. Interestingly, this conversation is going to kind of lead on to some of the conversations we're going to have with our guests on the show, because there has been a research suggesting which I'm sure you're quite familiar with, that a while back, the fact that, Muslim women or Pakistani women are not contributing, or the older generation haven't contributed into society, or because they can't speak English. Yes, learning speaking English is very important. However, so is acquiring the skills of your own language and sharing that with your children. I don't know. I'm getting a little bit tongue-tied here. Maybe my guest on the phone right now will be able to help me answer this question. I'm joined by no other than the very fabulous author, mindset coach, international award-winning, inspirational speaker, TV host, and ambassador for the She Awards. It's no other than Masart Alahi. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Shmaiza, how are you?
I'm very well. I thought you might do that in Urdu, actually, because I know you speak very good Urdu. You actually present an Urdu speaking show on one of the digital channels, in particular Islam channel Urdu. So we're talking about language, and we're talking about language skills. Mazad, why was it important for you to kind of do a show in Urdu when actually you're quite, English is like your first language in a sense?
Well, actually, you pushed me to that. So I don't know where we're going to go with this. You literally pushed me, and actually the audience who are listening, Shmaiza said, but I see you in an Urdu audience. Please go do that. I would love to see you in an Urdu show. And subhanallah, when you get there, kali zuban hai, yeah, you've got that kind of zuban, and it happened. So maybe I should get you to do more wishful thinking for me.
Oh, you weren't supposed to say that, but thank you very much. But how has that benefited you, and how has that kind of like benefited your audience?
Actually, I am. I'm not one of those to express the fact that how difficult it was to make that transition, because I did have a show in English before, and obviously we speak more Punjabi at home, actually Patwari, to be more what's the word, to be in detail. But the thing is, Urdu, actually I've never actually really spoken it, and I've learned it from picking up, obviously watching Pakistani dramas and stuff like that, because the Urdu is very poetic and it's very pure. So when I went into having my own show, Media Hair and Islam channel Urdu, what happened was it was a great experience for me. I did stumble a little bit at the beginning, but I just pushed on. And, I think once you start hearing and then once you start speaking, I think your subconscious mind just starts putting those words to your mouth and they just come out.
And it's about practice, isn't it? It's about practice. Yeah. And what's really, really quite interesting, you're not going to believe this. My daughter, mashallah, she did remarkably well in a spelling bee, and a spelling bee is a spelling contest, and it was a spelling bee language festival contest. So she'd kind of got in the top 4 sort of locally across all the schools for Spanish and French. And then I kind of asked her to kind of, speak to me in Urdu or do the translation of those words in Urdu. And she was able to do that as well. I'm like, what is going on? I've done really well here. But it was quite funny. But my mother did turn around and say, look, you know what? French go churro, Spanish go churro. Focus on the Urdu. That's all you need. That is all you need. But it's great to have those language skills. Now, are you a parent that actually encourages your child to speak her mother tongue?
Yes. Well, actually, yes, definitely. And when my daughter was up to 2.5 years old, my mum used to look after her and my sister-in-law. So she learned Punjabi first, actually. And I personally believe if you speak Punjabi first before any other language, you can pick up any other language on your tongue. I just think that.
Yeah.
And I think Urdu, because Urdu is a bit more, I think, more formal and it's more focused. Because I know I've seen my cousins and stuff who learned Urdu first as a language and then learning Punjabi afterwards. They couldn't. You could see they've got an accent in Punjabi,
right?
So like an Urdu accent, which is quite weird. And it's like, but when we were transitioning from Punjabi to Urdu, we had the accent wasn't a problem. So I think it's all about how your brain wavelengths do that. So my daughter, mashallah, she speaks Urdu, yes, but the funny thing is she speaks more English because her father would like to practice English at home.
And I'm noticing, I've noticed even grandparents are now, where the grandparents back in the day were very, very quite strict. That like, you know, as in our parents who are now grandparents, very strict on us. Make sure you only speak your Zaban or your mother tongue at home. No English is allowed. And now they are constantly speaking to the grandchildren in English and practicing their English on them. No, I shouldn't say that. But it's really quite interesting to see how the tables are turned. Do you think it's this is the heritage might be lost if we're not encouraging our children to kind of understand or speak the language?
Yes, definitely. Because it's like, you know, obviously, even if you are British born, whatever, you are Pakistani in the day. You know, your parents are Pakistani, and you know I think culture is something that should never be forgotten. So you should be tried and tied to be, you know, inside your culture as much as possible. And I think obviously, you know, we're living in a, you know, Western society anyway. We're adapting to the norms of the way we dress and the way we are, and you know, and it's quite. I think I find it quite upsetting to see sometimes when you see Asians who are actually embarrassed to be saying that they're Asians, and they try to be more English. And it's like, why are you ashamed of your culture? You know, every culture is beautiful in its own nature, and you bringing culture to the table is something that is part of Britain, really, because Britain is a multicultural society.
Do you think people or the younger generation are quite embarrassed to be heard speaking in their mother tongue?
I think so. Yeah, I've seen some like that. Or I think they just want to prove, you know, they think being more English and being more British. But the thing is, you can't change the color of your skin. You can't change your parents and the way they are. And I think it's, you know, but I think that thing is improving over time now. And it all depends on how your upbringing is with your children. Like, you know, are you keeping in touch with them and their culture? And I think it's very, very important of taking your children back home to Pakistan every few years, or India or Bangladesh or wherever you're from, to make them to see that side of the world and that side of the culture, because it just expands their wisdom really and knowledge of, okay, I'm not just in England and this is my life and it's just about me earning and it's just about speaking English and just, you know, just having that focus. But it's good to, like, I think it's a learning curve at the end of the day. You know, we tend to take our daughter back home as much as we can, like maybe every few years. It was very consistent up until the last couple of years, but then I noticed the change when we were taking her, actually, which is actually has the funny thing. When we were taking her every year, her language is very intact. But now, since there was a big gap, I noticed that Urdu is not the same anymore.
Because it's actually the practice as well. Because whilst I was growing up, there was always Urdu schools and Urdu classes, and I'm seeing less and less of that because the focus doesn't seem to be on the actual language learning. It's more now focused on sort of Islam and making sure that, you know, we prioritise the classes for children, and Islam and Arabic. Tajweed seems to be very, very popular at the moment as well. Now, your program that is Urdu based. It reaches out to a lot of viewers, mashallah, in not just nationally but internationally. How has the response been for you for this show?
Well, the response has been, alhamdulillah, you know, I can't thank Allah enough. It's been amazing. I think because I tend to have the name of the show is called Umeed Ahead, which means the dawn of hope. So I have guests on there who come and speak about their stories, and very common stories, in fact, about that are not really spoken about in society. For example, I think the biggest issue that we have in the society is where women are labelled as the problem in a marriage just because she's divorced. They say, oh, she must have caused something, that's why she's divorced. And I've been trying really hard to break that stigma. And subhanAllah, I've had lots of women who have been divorced to show their side of the story and say, look, this is what happened, which is why my marriage broke down. And I think it's been a big eye-opener to many, you know, to the society. Even if it makes one, you know, if it makes one mindset change, I think that's still a bit of a puddle, you know, a bit of a drip in the pond that you could say that, yes, a drop in the pond that you could say, look, you know, the change has started and the response has been phenomenal. And I've had couples on there who've not had children, you know, and then they were struggling to have children, which is something that to be spoken about. And I think the feelings that, you know, the society doesn't understand, especially the culture society, like, you know, bachche kyun nahi ho rahe, whereas nobody understands the pain that they feel behind that, whereas it's not something that's in their hands at the end of the day. Fertility, for example, you know, is not in your hands, it's in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hands. And, you know, lots of other people who've had, like, you know, skin diseases and whatnot, subhanAllah, it's just been great. I've had some phenomenal women on my show.
Mashallah.
I was amazed to see that this is happening, and proud to see this happening in the Asian society.
And the fact that women are coming forward. And this is the whole premise of today's show. We're not just talking about, language, the Urdu language, and reviving that. We're also talking to my guests this morning about the contribution of Pakistani, South Asian, Muslim women are having in British society. Now, the reason why I'm talking about this topic is because last week was International Girl Child Day, and it was wonderful to see the on social media the contribution of so many women and girls that women are having on girls' lives, and bringing them forward and enabling them to empower them in all sections of society. But unfortunately, we still see a number of girls across the world who are not educated, who are not able to have equal rights, and who don't even have basic sanitary equipment, unfortunately. And so the International Girl Child Day, I think, was very, very interesting to observe. Now, I'm speaking to Musard Elahi on the show today. She's an author, mindset coach, international award-winning inspirational speaker, TV host, and an ambassador for the She Awards. And one thing that really resonates very well with Musard is the fact that she is a trailblazer when it comes to engaging and inspiring and getting women to come forward and share their stories, and in particular on this show. Another guest that I'm looking forward to speaking to is no other than Aleena Din, who's actually studying at Oxford University. She's doing a PhD. She's a history student, and she's actually focusing on the migration and settlement of women from Azad Kashmir, Pakistan, to different parts of the UK. And the whole purpose of this is to kind of highlight that the contribution Pakistani women have made to British society by collecting the testimonies of migrant and first generation women so they are no longer invisible. Now, this is on the back end of the fact that there has been reports suggesting that, Muslim women, Pakistani women who, because they can't speak English, have not been able to contribute actively in society. Now, I want to ask you, Musard, how did you feel when you hear that? When you heard that report suggesting that just because women are not speaking English, because they're not able to communicate in English, they're not fully contributing to society?
Well, that depends really. It is upsetting at the same time, but at the same time, I think it doesn't matter what language or where you're from, you can express your views, at least. Like, for example, I think having more platforms in Urdu, like I have my platform where I've given to many women whose English isn't their first language actually have come on. And, I wouldn't dare to say they don't speak English well, because at least they are communicating in English if they have learnt that. But their most work has been in Urdu and based in Pakistan and around the world. So I think that's a bit of a negative report. I think once a woman puts her mind to something, nothing can really stop her. I don't think language is going to make any difference. It all depends on how motivated you are, how because I always believe this, and I teach to my clients and wherever I speak, is I think everybody's born with a purpose, and everybody's got a unique gift to give out to this world before they leave. So I don't think a language or anything can be a barrier. So if you want to do something, you will go out and do it.
And your show is a real testament to the fact that the women that may have been missed off the radar, who have a story to tell, who've not been able to say it in English, have had a platform to come forward and comfortably, in a safe space, express themselves.
Yes, definitely. Most definitely. And I think it's about having more platforms like mine where women are able to come on and speak. And I just don't think anyone is higher than anyone else, which is why I say I believe in common people coming in my show, and I think we're all common. I don't think anyone is above anyone else. And for them to come and share their stories and their journeys and their hard work in the society, it's phenomenal, and it makes me to go in awe. Actually, I feel embarrassed with the fact that I haven't done enough, whereas English is my main language, and I'm educated in the UK, and these people have come from back home and made these changes. Phenomenal changes to the world.
Mashallah, and we look forward to following those stories even more so. I want to ask you about International Girl Child Day. And I know this resonates quite well with you because you've actually released a book which celebrates the education of a young girl. Do you feel more work needs to be done, Azad, when it comes to motivating young girls and empowering them with this, equipping them with not just communication skills, but the skills, work skills and education?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that stigma of the old society is, ladki itne padh ke kya karegi is dying now, which is great for the fact that education is seen as a bystander for women to say, they don't need to educate themselves because they're just going to end up in the kitchen, which I think, well, regardless if they're going to end up in the kitchen or just get married, education is so necessary. Knowledge is something that the Nabi Sallallahu said, that keep acquiring knowledge until you even die. So it's the knowledge which is what we're going to pass on to our generation, to your children, to your nephews and nieces. So having, I think first, most, I think women should be inspired to, and girls, is to educate yourself from a young age. And I think what I would say is not just normal education in math, science and English that we have, the subjects that we have in school. I think self-development is the main thing, I think, which needs to be more highlighted in schools now, which I think is slowly starting to pick up, because coming from a self-development background, I've noticed that, sometimes I always wish I knew this 10 years ago or 15 years ago of my life. Gosh, where would my life be? But I think if I've had this, revelation, maybe this is something that needs to be instilled with the girls of tomorrow. That, if they can have this of tomorrow, like, where would they be? It'd be unimaginable. So I think, that could be added for the fact that, instilling self-development from a very young age of, self-affirmations, self-positivity, how, self-love, which I think needs to be more and more installed in girls, especially with the images of the media, showing us, what we should look like and how we should eat and stuff like that, but nobody really talks about the main thing is about how to be happy and how to love yourself as who you are, which is something I think is very, very necessary.
And it's taking that pride and having the confidence to be able to do that. So how do you make, as a mindset coach, how do you reach out to people? How can people contact you, Azad?
Well, I've got my website, obviously, www.masailahi.com. So there's more than, you can email me there, if you have any questions. And subhanAllah, like my Facebook, is also there, and I have lots of women who contact me on a daily basis if they've got any problem, and if I can help them there and then, I would be more than happy to give my 2 cents and say, look, this is what you need to do. I'll give a suggestion. I won't force it, whatever. But I'm just saying, I had a couple of weeks ago, I had a mother actually who contacted me, worried about her daughter who was, going through. I think she caught her daughter doing something very out of her age, like when she was viewing online, and she was very worried and she was very embarrassed to go and contact anyone else. And I just gave her a few suggestions. Alhamdulillah, overnight the mother and daughter relationship was improved massively, because
wow.
she told me the distance barriers that they were having, and then I said to her, look, rather than judging her, just go in there. I gave a few tips to do, go in there and, as a friend, not as a mother, and you see the massive impact. And I think it's more about being there for others, and having an open ear can make a massive difference, or just listening.
Definitely.
I'm always here to listen. If anybody wants to contact me, I'd be more than happy to help.
Well, we have a listener who's just contacted us, and if they could kindly give me their name, because I'm seeing Atik 2 on here, but if you could give me your name. Assalamu alaikum, sister, I'm assuming. She says she works with women in her centre and the women of all ages are provided English language skills. But I am educated by them on a daily basis from the skills they have and the knowledge they have. Women are amazing, and it's amazing to see how much they can achieve even with the limitations of language. This lady on radio totally resonates with her, and she's talking about women not limited by things like language. Thank you so very much for that message. And what do you think to that, Azad? Because what you're talking about is really resonating with this wonderful listener. Thank you so very much for contacting us. That language shouldn't limit us in what we want to achieve, but it can actually be an asset too.
Yes, precisely. I think, like I said at the beginning, that when the middle is like, knowledge is something that we should keep acquiring, and if learning a language is about knowledge anyway, but like the listener has mentioned, language is not really a barrier, really. If you want to really do something and put your mind to it, it is achievable.
Now, I'm going to do a bit of a language test with you, Azad, okay?
Okay, no problem.
All right, so I'll give you the English, you need to give me the Urdu. Watermelon.
Zarda.
Huh? Watermelon
Yes,
zarda? I thought zarda was
zarda.
sweet rice.
No, not zarda. There's a way of saying it. Yeah, there's zarda, I think. Sweet rice, I think that's in Punjabi to say zarda.
Okay. Kitchen.
Kitchen.
Uh-huh.
Bawarchi khana.
Okay. And
Yalla, don't embarrass me. Carry on.
We're heading off to a break now, so I'm going to put a stop there. But thank you.
Watermelon is tarboos. I think, carry on. You can go now.
You need to go and get yourself some. Right. Thank you so very much, Masat, for joining us. And congratulations for the work that you do and also being an ambassador for the She Awards. We weren't able to talk about that, but that's a real celebration of all the achievements of women across the country. So I'm sure folks can Google that. And so thank you so very much. We're heading off to a break and we're going to be joined by another fantastic guest who's doing a PhD at Oxford University, Aleena Din, straight after this. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
From the heart of Bedfordshire in Luton, this is Inspire FM. Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Cube with Sister Shamiza.
Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. It's 10:30, Monday 14th of October, and you're listening to Shamiza on the Urban Cube show, taking you all the way up to 12 o'clock this morning on Inspire FM. We're beaming out loud and proud to the wonderful listeners in Luton surrounding areas and Peterborough on Salam Radio and Sheffield on Link FM. So thank you so very much, guys, for tuning in this morning. And if you'd like to tell me where else you're listening in from, then why not on 07779481822. That's the WhatsApp number. So look forward to reading out your text messages this morning. What's really quite intriguing on the show today, we are kind of becoming multilingual. We're kind of homing in on our Urdu or native mother tongue skills this morning. Because on today's show, I've had the pleasure of speaking to no other than Musat Ilahi earlier on, who actually does a show in Urdu. And the whole purpose of her show on Islam Channel is to basically to engage an audience and guests that don't normally get a platform to share their experiences, in particular women. And today's show is about language skills and how we can kind of nurture and connect to our love for, or the lost form of mother tongue or lost art form of Urdu in particular, because I'm joined by later on in the show by no other than Taimur Rehman. Taimur is a well-known and popular Urdu poet and narrator who has worked on numerous festivals showcasing the beauty and the art form of Urdu language, and he's going to be performing on the show on the latter half, which I'm really looking forward to hearing, and I'm sure you will too. Also, I'm joined by a fantastic, remarkable woman who is actually a mother of 5. She is a very established entrepreneur, blogger. She's also a qualified nurse and actually runs an aesthetic clinic. She'll be joining us after 11 o'clock, and her name is Sophina Khan, and Sophina is going to be talking to me about how she's balancing her work and her work life and motherhood, and she actually speaks 5 languages as well. So I'm quite intrigued to hear a lot more from her as well. But before then, I'm really, really excited to introduce my next guest. Now, this is a remarkable young woman who is really, really breaking the glass ceiling when it comes to education. She is doing a PhD in history. She's a history student at the University of Oxford and originally hailing from Middlesbrough. Now, she is focusing on the migration and settlement of women from Azad Kashmir, Pakistan, to different parts of the UK between 1962 and 2002. And she is wanting to show the vast contribution of Muslim women and Pakistani women that have made to British society by collecting the testimonies of migrant and first generation women so they are no longer invisible. Now, what's interesting is the fact that earlier on with Musat, I actually mentioned research that which was quite taken not very lightly regarding the fact that Muslim women or Pakistani women who have not been able to speak English have not contributed to society. Whereas here we have Aleena, who's actually using that research to help identify the real true contribution that women from the first generation have made in the UK. Now, I'd love you guys to kind of get involved and engage in this conversation. Maybe share your stories of your mother stories on 07779481822 and whether you'd like to participate in this research that Aleena is doing. So it's my absolute pleasure to invite Aleena Din on the show this morning. Assalamu alaikum, Aleena.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
You're so very welcome, and thank you so very much for joining the show this morning. Now, where are you? Where am I ringing you from this morning? Because it was a mobile number. Where are you situated today?
Yeah, I'm in Oxford at the moment, in the middle of doing my PhD research, so quite far from home. But yeah, getting into the swing of things.
Oh, bless you! And what's the weather like in Oxford?
Horrific. It's not nice. I'm sat with a water bottle next to me.
A water bottle. It has got a little bit chilly. It really has. And you've got your water bottle out, so that's a good start, I think. Hopefully, you won't be having to hold that for too long. Now, thank you so very much for joining us. Do you know what? I'm gonna knock this a little bit slightly and just ask folks listening in. Right, I am asking everybody the translation of certain words. Now, I did ask Mazar this morning what what the Urdu word for watermelon is. Do you know? Mm-hmm. Do you know the Urdu word for watermelon?
No, I don't think I do.
So I'm
really racking. I'm trying to think. I don't think I know.
So I'm going to throw this over to listeners. Tell us what you think is. She said it was zarda. I don't think it is. 07779481822. Or you might even want to share with us what you think the Urdu word for water bottle might be. I don't know. Do you know, Aleena?
Don't know that one either.
Oh dear, that's another show in itself. Now, Aleena, thank you so very much for joining us this morning. As you've said, you're in Oxford at the moment, doing your research for your PhD, which is actually around the contribution of Pakistani and Muslim women in British society, the first generation women, in order to make them no longer visible. Goodness me, what a fascinating piece of research. Tell us why you feel it's important to do this research.
Well, being Pakistani and being a Muslim woman, I really recognized as I was getting older that these were stories that were not featuring in mainstream discourses. So in particular, I remember that really the thing that inspired my research was the case review that came out a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And there was a statement that had created controversy, this idea that Pakistani women were the most economically inactive in the UK. Mm-hmm. And that really struck me because I remember growing up and seeing women working and contributing all the time, whether it be to the community through Islamic classes or running a cloth house or working in a grocery shop. These are things that women were doing. So I really understood that actually if these were the discourses that were dominating the conversation surrounding Pakistani women and Muslim women, Kashmiri women in particular, then someone needs to, I guess, step up and make sure that these discourses aren't driven by political agendas, rather the women themselves, giving them the platform to speak about their experiences. And the research just sort of grew from there, really.
Now, the research didn't just begin here. It kind of began a little earlier on, I understand, whilst you were studying for your MA. And what was it about that MA? Was this at the University of Cambridge?
Yeah, so I'd previously gone to Glasgow University and did a history degree there. And it's quite typical, British history degree. Mm. There is a little bit of world history, but mostly British history, and a British history that isn't necessarily reflective of migrant groups. So when it came to the time thinking about my future and maybe seeing academia as a path I wanted to take, I really wanted to make sure that I was doing research that I would be proud to put my name to. And that really meant digging deep, because I had to really rethink and think about what were the parts of history that were missing. And it took me a long time actually to get to this. And it took a lot of going back and really getting to the roots of things. If women like me or my grandma or my mom aren't being represented in history, then it wasn't really, I felt a responsibility to take it on myself, I guess. And, you know, it is a big challenge, but hopefully this will inspire a lot of other young historians or women to, at the very basic, talk to their moms and grandmas and aunties about their journey to the UK.
Has it surprised you that there is not enough written, or is this the first bit of research that's ever going to be written about this contribution? Because normally what we seem to be finding is a lot of research around oppression and Muslim women, or, you know, the hijab and the fact that that's suppressing Muslim women and they're not able to contribute because and Islamophobia is another thing. But this is slightly different, this research. This is actually focusing on the actual contributions, the actual story.
Yeah, and it shocked me a lot, actually. There's this big thing in academia of making an original contribution and changing ideas. So the first thing I did, obviously, when I came up with this idea was, oh my God, this is too good to be true. Like, it can't be that there hasn't been a collected history or an oral history project that looks at the lives of British Kashmiri women across the country. And of course, there's small pockets of this happening. So, for example, there's an oral history project that took place in the 80s in Bradford, for example. But what about places where I grew up, like Middlesbrough or Oldham or even Luton? Like, where are those stories coming from, and what sort of history is being generated? And like you rightly pointed out, there is quite a distinctive type of scholarship being produced about Muslim or Kashmiri women that is by no means reflective of the vast majority of people in our community, or about the diversity in our community as well. And I think what this is really a symptom of is the idea of speaking of women rather than speaking to women. And when you really take the time to speak to women and ask them about their settlement in the UK, or, you know, their life being here and the incredible contributions and hardships that come with that journey, you realize that the things that dominate the conversation are things to do with raising their children, about making sure that there's enough money to have food on the table, about the women that supported them in terms of facilitating that settlement. These are things that never really feature in the history of Muslim women in this country.
Of course, and it's a tough journey that they had to make and adapt to society at that time when there was not much support network, and obviously without the language skills when they arrived as well, and having to communicate and navigate their way around British life. What from your research to date, have you found information that has kind of like surprised you, or do you feel that you have the answers already?
Oh my gosh, every single conversation manages to surprise me. And I think that partly comes to the fact that, you know, I'm second generation. I think it's so easily forgotten sometimes just how difficult and how incredible it is to understand where women started and the journeys that they've made. So, like, one example I can tell you is when I was in Middlesbrough, I thought I knew the Middlesbrough community so well. I grew up, I knew everyone, but I realized very, very quickly, speaking on language, every woman I spoke to had participated in English language education at some point in their life in the UK. And that blew my mind, because it tells you so much about this community of women, that when their kids were at school and they had the choice to make about what to do with their time, they decided to educate themselves and learn English. And that is such an incredible fact that has not been explored yet, this idea of adult education, but adult education and the access of it by migrant women. And it's something that I guess has spawned another strand of research that I'm really excited to explore further by going to Luton or Oldham or other parts of the UK to see how that transpired there as well.
Now, you've mentioned Luton. Are you actually wanting to do research in this town?
Yeah, I want to come. I want to speak to people. I want to speak to women who came between 1962 and 2002 from Azad Kashmir, and women who came here as children or grew up here in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I want to be able to accurately reflect life in Luton for British Kashmiri women, and this means first and foremost collecting their testimony and making sure that their stories aren't forgotten with time, that they're recorded, and that there will always be a place for them in the history books. And of course, that the biggest priority of all this is ensuring the well-being of these women. I completely understand that when it comes to academia and scholarship to do with Muslim women, there is such an emphasis on oppression and victimhood that I completely understand that there is some reluctance for women to participate in this kind of research, but nothing will be published that won't be approved by women first. They will get first say, and everything I write will stem and be directed by the conversations that we have.
Now, is testimony is what you're wanting. Could you just explain what that is?
Yeah, so I think it should be really important to preface this with the fact that there is an incredibly rigorous approval of getting this project going. So there is a lot of concern about the well-being of participants in any oral history project, including this one. So what it will entail is me visiting women, or women, us meeting in like public spaces on an individual basis or as a group to talk about their memories of coming here, bringing up certain topics and seeing what kind of conversations are elicited from that. And, these will be anonymized for the safety of the women so that they're not personally identified.
Right.
But everything written there will be things that come from our conversations, everything from things to do with marriage and children to community to, and I think most importantly, the different types of work women did, the activities that dominated their everyday.
So how can people get in contact with you if they want to get involved? And does it have to be in English? Could it be in Urdu, Punjabi, Patwari, whatever language that the women speak?
I think that's the most important thing, and I think this is why this research has taken a long time to come to fruition. I can speak in Urdu, Punjabi, Patwari, English, whatever women feel most comfortable speaking. And if anyone wants to get involved, my email is aleena.din@hotmail.co.uk. And just drop me a line, and I'd be so happy to answer any questions or any concerns and queries, and really get this project in Luton going, so that there is a history of Kashmiri women in Luton that can sit in the Oxford Library for the rest of time.
Wow, to sit in the Oxford Library, one of the leading universities in the world, and to be archived there. I mean, it can't be more tremendous than that. Now, Aleena, you're somebody that can speak 4 different languages. There's been research suggesting that, children that speak as English is not their first language do not go on to achieve. Clearly, you have really achieved. You've gone on to do a PhD in history. You're doing a PhD in history at University of Oxford. You studied at the University of Cambridge, and you have an undergraduate degree in history and politics from the University of Glasgow. Congratulations, my dear. That's absolutely phenomenal. You make us very proud, and you make me very proud reading this. But I want to take a step back, my darling. Tell me about your mum and your grandmother.
Oh my gosh, honestly, the most incredible women, and they are really, I guess, if I look at the genesis of this research, it was having conversations with them. My grandma came to this country in the late 60s, not knowing a word of English, and yet, is such a respected member of our community as someone who taught the Quran for 20 or 30 years. So many kids, every time we go out, people coming up to her, remembering that time, her teaching them in her living room. And then my mom, she came to this country so young, and had me when she was 19, and we've sort of gone in this journey together of trying to figure it out. Going to university and choosing academia as a path is not necessarily as common as it should be in our community, and I really encourage as many women listening to this as possible to consider it, and if they have any questions to reach out to me. But I really owe it to my mom and grandma in particular for leading the way and encouraging learning in its different forms.
Learning in its different forms. And the fact is, English wasn't their first language. They learned at a later stage, but that did not stop you from achieving. So this clearly proves that, children whose English is not their first language can go on and achieve so many tremendous things. And we've seen examples of that. Now, I want to ask you, Aleena, what are you hoping will be achieved from this research that you're doing?
I mean, the very basic thing of empowering women to tell their stories, first and foremost. I think there's a real, and I've noticed this from interviewing people, a lack of confidence in believing that their story matters. So if on a very basic level, I, maybe encourage women to speak a bit more of, some of the great memories that they have, but also some of the difficult ones, that I've really achieved my goal. But in a practical sense, when it comes to shaping policy to do with the British Muslim community, the British Pakistani community in this country, if that community is not understood and its history is not understood, then policy will never, ever be able to serve this community well. It will always do a similar thing that it has always done, which is use stereotypes or, popular discourses that aren't rooted in fact as a way to inform the type of policies that are seemingly needed for our community. I think having a history that is full and complete and is one that reflects a significant proportion of British Kashmiri society, then hopefully when it comes to the future, there will be something that people can point at in terms of a collection of testimony or history that can inform policy in the future.
Inshallah. Now, you're 24 years of age and you're actually doing a PhD at the University of Oxford. We normally associate PhDs with, say, sort of the 40-somethings or the late 30s or 50-somethings. What made you decide to do a PhD, and so very young as well?
It was, I'd like to say that the grand plan, but it really did happen quite by accident. And it was, I really, really can't emphasize enough how much I owe to my parents and family members for, allowing me to sort of go where curiosity led me. Doing the PhD, I guess, was born out of the fact that when I was doing my master's research, I sort of realized that there's so much more left. Like 9 months of research will never, ever be able to tell a fuller story. So everyone else in my class was doing PhD applications. It was something that I never really considered. So really, because of everyone else doing it, I was like, okay, it's not going to hurt me putting in an application. And I really understood that, doing a PhD or getting an offer is one thing, but getting the funding to do a PhD is a completely different thing. And I really needed other people and people at Oxford to see the value in the research that I was doing. And very, very luckily, the Arts and Humanities Research Council on my college here, Balliol College, saw the value of this research and put the money forward and invested money into this project. And that is really a boost of confidence that they're willing to invest in a project to do with British Kashmiri women. They see the value in there.
How remarkable. And thank you for doing it. And I think what's really wonderful is the fact that your heritage is Kashmiri as well. So the fact that you are the right person to kind of move forward with this research, inshallah. So do tell us once again, Aleena, how can people get in contact with you to get involved with this research that you're wanting to do in Luton?
Yeah, if you email me at aleena.din@hotmail.co.uk, or even put into Google Aleena Din Oxford, there'll be information that comes up in all the different ways that you can get in contact with me, and I'll be more than happy to get back in touch and arrange a meeting so we can chat.
Fantastic. Now, last week was International Girl Child Day, and I just wanted to ask you, from the experiences that you have, is there any advice or tips you'd like to give to young women or parents listening into the show today and encouraging their daughters to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is such an important lesson in understanding that we as women should feel empowered to follow the things that genuinely interest us. And it seems quite frivolous to say, but the idea of like wanting to pursue history, for example, is genuinely born out of an interest that I've had all my life.
Yeah, and it's not a common subject for a Pakistani or Kashmiri Muslim woman.
It isn't, and I think there's a stigma of, okay, if doing history or doing a humanities subject means you won't make enough money, but if money is the thing that's going to motivate you in terms of your life choices, I've seen it time and again, it won't lead to you having a sense of fulfillment. And when it comes to education in particular, to parents, like, please allow your children to follow their curiosity. And academia is such a fulfilling and important path that women can take, that I've seen. I'm also lucky to be here at Oxford and seeing so many Muslim women undergraduates in the history department.
Wow.
And now it's time to push this forward and make sure that there are more Muslim women doing PhDs and master's degrees in humanities subjects and really making a contribution. So to women listening, just follow what interests you the most and keep on going. Don't let anyone stop you, and especially don't let a man stop you. That's what my dad always told me.
And your father is no other than the very well-known playwright Aesthetics Din, who spoke about you when we interviewed him on the show. Now, thank you so very much, Aleena, for joining us this morning. It's been an absolute tremendous conversation that we've had, and thank you for the amazing work that you do. Have a wonderful day studying today at Oxford.
Thank you.
I'll give you a water bottle, a hug from me. Take care, my dear.
Yes, I will. Thank you. Bye.
But take care. That was the wonderful Aleena Din, who's doing a PhD at the University of Oxford, and she is focusing on first-generation women, testimonies of migrant women in British society from Azad Kashmir. We'll talk a little bit more about that after the break. I'm joined by another remarkable woman by the name of Sophina Khan. Straight after this, Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to an Inspire FM podcast, making available our popular programs from our daily broadcast on Inspire FM.
Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Cube with Sister Shamiza.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum. How are you this morning, folks? Do tell me what you're up to. I hope you've had a fantastic weekend and a brilliant start to the week, as always. Yes, the weather has got a little bit cold. We were speaking to the very fabulous Aleena Din just before the break, and she'd actually got a water bottle out to keep her warm in Oxford while she's doing her research, and her research is something to shout loud and proud about. Actually, she's a PhD history student at the University of Oxford. And she'd actually originally studied at the University of Cambridge, and also she has an undergraduate degree in history and politics from the University of Glasgow. Now, the reason for her interview was the fact that she was helping to highlight the significant contribution of Pakistani women, Kashmiri women, Muslim women, the first generation in the communities of Britain between 1962 and 2002. And what she wanted to highlight was their vast contribution to British society by collecting the testimony of migrant and first generation women so that they are no longer invisible. This is on the back of some social policy reports that had suggested that Pakistani women or Muslim women, because they don't speak English, were not sufficiently contributing to the economy. Now, partially there may be some truth in that, but clearly there's obviously lots of case studies where Muslim women, Pakistani women who may not be speaking English as their first language or may not have the language skills have really, really contributed to society. And she was given examples of her own grandmother. So if you'd like to get involved with that research, which I hope you will do, because she is coming to Luton and she does want to kind of share, archive your stories so that they are sitting nicely in the library of Oxford University. Where else, would you want to have your stories archived? The Kashmiri women, the Pakistani women of this town of Luton being archived, their story is being shared. Now, if you'd like to get involved with Aleena's research, then please do get in touch with her. It's Aleena, that's aleena.din@hotmail.co.uk. So this is the research that she's doing on the testimonies of migrant and first generation women so that they are no longer invisible. It's an oral history project and she's doing a PhD in history at University of Oxford. That is Aleena Din. An absolute pleasure speaking to her. Today's show is about empowerment. We are marking International Girl Child Day. I've had the absolute pleasure of speaking to some remarkable women earlier on in the show who've really made their mark in the world of coaching, writing books, television, research, and it doesn't stop there. And both of these women I've spoken to, English was their second language, interesting enough. Now, another remarkable woman who's joining me on the show is, oh my goodness, I need, 2 mics to announce her. She is not only a advanced aesthetics practitioner, she runs her own business. She runs her own state-of-the-art clinic. She's a qualified cardiology nurse. She's a blogger, makeup artist, a very successful entrepreneur with lots of brands under her name. And believe it or not, she's a mother of 5, and I believe she can speak 4 languages. It is no other than Sophina Khan. Assalamu alaikum, Sophina.
Walaikum salam. That was quite an introduction.
You totally deserve it. Now, you're speaking to me all the way from Birmingham this morning. How is the weather, my dear? I've got to ask that question.
The weather is a bit grey, but it's not too bad. It's dry. That's the main thing.
And you're the perfect person to keep everybody healthy, happy and warm, not just in the work that you do, but also the fact that you're a cardiac nurse. Mashallah, mashallah. How have you been able to manage 5 children and the amazing work that you do? And you're only 33.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's just purely based on, organising my time. I'm really hot on organisation at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Juggling everything. I've always been a multitasker. I've always loved to juggle things, and I think I just can't sit still as much as I'd like to try. So yeah.
Mashallah.
Energy.
I don't know, Sophina, if you were listening in to me just beginning of the show when we talked about Aleena Din and doing this research and finding the testimonies of migrant and first generation women and their contributions to society. Can you relate to that? Does this relate to your story and your mum's story?
It kind of does relate. I mean, my mum was born here, so it's a case of I think it's about the upbringing and where you're born and the cultural surroundings and whatnot and how that has an impact on life. So mum being born here was quite a bonus, but on the flip side, my mother-in-law is not from here; she's from Pakistan, from Lahore. So there is a huge difference in terms of just the growing up, the cultural background. My mum, she went to uni, she got educated,
Mashallah.
And she does all that alongside having us 4 at the time.
Wow.
So yeah, I think we get a lot of our work ethic from mum and dad, because dad, likewise, even though he didn't go to university or get educated or anything like that, he worked really, really hard to make sure that everything was paid for and done, and in order to support mum to do her education as well.
So you had quite a strong unit there with a very, strong parents, mashallah, who are passionate about education. Now, interestingly enough, you actually got married quite young, and you were able to still whilst getting married, still continue your education as well.
Yeah. So I was 18 when Aleem and I got married. I was 18 and he was 20. And I was meant to go to uni to complete my medical degree. But yeah, Aleem and I decided to get married because, you know, we were young and in love and it was the right thing to do, rather than live in sin, should we say, Islamically speaking. So yeah, we just took the plunge and we got married, and Dad probably wasn't too happy at the time purely because he wanted me to get educated. But alhamdulillah, we managed to still do it, even though I fell pregnant straight away with Isa. We did plan on having Isa, but then we had Ismail and Usman pretty much straight away.
Mashallah.
Yeah, so three babies, and then I went back to uni.
Wow.
And I did my nursing degree then. It was good though. At the end of the day, it helped us mature and just grow up and just go along with responsibility and take. I just like to take everything as it comes. I do like to plan ahead, but we are quite spontaneous as well at the same time.
Now, this is interesting that you decided to do your education as a mother and as a married woman with 3 children. And so what advice could you give to listeners who are basically maybe wanting to go to university after they've got married and might think, gosh, is that suitable? Can I do it? And they've got young children as well, because we are seeing a growing number of women going into education with children.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, don't get me wrong. It just depends on how driven you are as a person as well. It's not something easy to do. It's something where you need to be in a really mature mindset, and have a lot of drive and a lot of passion for whatever it is you choose to do. But it's definitely doable. You know, I've seen so many other mothers go to university after having children and after getting married, and they are able to do it. I mean, typically it's probably ideal to get your education done first and then go into marriage. But at the end of the day, I think Qadrullah, everyone's qadr is written, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But that doesn't hold you back from creating a life for yourself. Because it's not only going to help you, it's going to help your spouse, it's going to help your kids. You know, inshallah, in the future, if you choose to have kids, or if you already have kids and you go to university, it's going to give them something to look up to say, you know, my mom's such and such and my dad's such and such. And, you know, it just gives them that, you're that role model for them. And it's a case of...
And you've mentioned that your husband, mashallah, you work together to create... you know, the support network for your children as well. And he supports your work and everything that you're doing?
Yeah, he does. He's really good, alhamdulillah. I mean, he's a gas engineer by trade. He didn't go to university. It wasn't for him. And fair enough, it's not for everybody. So, yeah, he supported me in everything I chose to do. I chose to go to university to do my nursing degree because medicine would have been too difficult with the children.
Right.
It would have been doable, but I didn't want to neglect the children.
Of course.
You know, working a 60, 70-hour week, as well as running around with the kids. So university was so close to home. It just made sense to go ahead and do this. So he was really supportive. And that's when I started my makeup artist career as well. And again, you know, I had clients coming to the house. I would go out early in the morning for brides or party makeups and whatnot, and he would help out with the kids. His family would help, which was nice. It was good.
Wow. And you began your makeup artistry career, blogging career, prior to like the social media burst that we see now. How did you, I mean, this fascinates me, from nursing to makeup artistry. How did that even come about?
So it's a funny one because I've always had anything medical health related. That was always my passion. But I grew up as quite a tomboy.
Right.
Which is quite bizarre that I wanted to make up. My mum was an Avon rep when we were younger.
That was the thing thing then. Oh my gosh, that was the thing.
Mum
Celebrity.
used to bring home. Yeah, literally, like she'd come home with her briefcase full of Avon makeup.
Oh wow.
And me and my sister would like steal her little briefcase and go into her room and do each other's makeup. So
did you sit there hours and hours looking through each of the samples? And I used to do that. I really did.
My favourite was, them tiny little mini lipstick samples. They're really, really small with the glass little head, the plastic little head. Those were my favourite. And there were so many of them as well, and they're all neatly lined up, and it was just like sweet.
I always wanted to be one of their reps when I grew up. I'm still waiting to be.
Yeah, Avon. I can't believe it's still going to be there.
There are other brands out there. We are not brand endorsing here, but you are a brand in itself, Sophina. Mashallah, you've got, you've set up a makeup brand. I mean, you've got a lash product that you're successful in launching. You're also a trained makeup trainee as well. You've got your own academy. What is there that you cannot do? Because you're looking internally and externally, you are kind of ticking the boxes. But I want to ask you, this drive with the makeup industry, is the bubble going to burst?
For myself,
just generally, because it's just it's at its peak. It's really kind of like, there is, and
it is very saturated, and everybody is becoming a makeup artist.
Yes.
I mean, but I think as the population grows and trends increase, and it's a case of, because we can't always have 5, say, makeup artists in West Midlands covering the whole of the West Midlands, because people would never be able to book them due to availability and whatnot. So there is always going to be a need for makeup artists. Birmingham is very saturated with makeup artists, but they've all got work, alhamdulillah.
Wow.
So it is a case of it will always be there. Before, it was just the brides that would, get dolled up for their functions, but now everyone does it, whether it's a party, a birthday party, a graduation, a prom. It doesn't have to just be a bride on a wedding now. People want to get their makeup done regardless. Even if it just means having a little shoot.
Bless you. Now, I want to ask you about internal beauty as well, because you sound like somebody who, you're an entrepreneur, you're a mother, you're a successful businesswoman, and you're academic too. You seem to tick every box. And mashallah, internal beauty, what does that actually also mean to you, apart from external beauty?
I think that's everything. I think that's priority. I mean, in terms of internally, how we think, how we feel, how we perceive things is the most important thing. Externally, you can be the most beautiful person, amazing features, makeup on point, fashionably on trend and whatnot. But, I don't know how to say this lightly, so I'm just going to say it as it is. If you are not a nice person, or if you are not an honest person, or, an ethical person, it will show, and and people perceive it. It does always show, and I just feel like it's really important to, have that, love yourself internally, in terms of just have that, self-esteem, confidence. Everybody has flaws, that's okay, and it's just about bettering ourselves. Everybody will have something more than what others would have, and it's about congratulating others, but also congratulating yourself. It's fine that somebody may have something more than you or whatnot, and we are taught to appreciate that and just say alhamdulillah for everything we have, and may Allah bless them, and may Allah also bless myself as well. So it's just we live in a society where jealousy and hasad and all these things are very, very common, and it's just a case of just remembering, be grateful for everything we have, and just, I'm all about honesty and integrity. And that's, for me, those are the most important qualities of any person. Those who know me very well know how much I love honesty. And I think honesty speaks so much more than any quality, because it allows you to build trust with people. And trust is very important in building relationships.
And especially the industry that you're in too, because you've got people's faces in your hand, and they rely on you. You talk a lot about faith here, and being and graciously put as well, and thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How does faith play a part in your life?
So faith is very important. In terms of, we were brought up, I went to an Islamic school from year 5 up until end of secondary. So faith was really instilled in us in terms of, we didn't have to go overboard and go too deep, but the main thing was we were doing our fundamentals in terms of praying 5 times a day, fasting, being honest, and just, being good people. My mom's a theologian, so she studied Islamic studies up to PhD level.
Subhanallah,
so
wow.
She's really taught us a lot as well. And dad in the last, I'd say, 8 to 9 years has really developed his Islamic character. He was fine before, he was brilliant before, but he really took his time out to spend that time in masjid and learn how to read the Quran with tajweed and start memorizing and, learning all of the ayahs with their meaning as well. So if we have a conversation now, Dad can easily pick out an ayah from the Quran, which is suitable to the situation. So alhamdulillah, we've always had that instilled in us.
And so you've
always told as well.
Mashallah, so you've been able to balance that in your life and with your prayers and your work. And do you think that's kind of given you a real holistic overview of everything that you do? I want to ask you an interesting question. Now, you mentioned your dad and going to masjid. Now, is this how your father saw your husband?
Okay, so Dad did recognize when I spoke to Dad and I mentioned to him that I want to get married. Dad said, okay, give me his telephone number or give him my number. So they got in contact with each other and they had a date set to come to the house. So when my father-in-law, my husband and his brothers came to the house and their mom, my dad instantly recognized them from our local central mosque in Birmingham.
Right.
And that for him was really reassuring, because he felt like, a person who prays and who has the routine and the discipline in their life of praying and, doing at least their fundamentals, that's a good thing. That just shows that, they're trying, at least they're on some sort of a journey, spiritual journey. And, inshallah, they'll be God-fearing as well, because that's what we all want for our daughters, to marry someone who's God-fearing and who practices and who are just good people. And so, Dad was really happy about that. He recognized them from the masjid, and they also recognized Dad, and it all went really well, alhamdulillah. It couldn't have gone better, to be fair.
Mashallah. So any brothers out there right now, make sure you're going to Jummah, going to masjid, because your potential father-in-law is sat there observing you. And that's definitely a great start. What a fantastic story. That really made me, that was lovely to hear. Now, folks, if you're listening into the show, you are listening to me, Shmaizi, on the Urban Cube on Inspire FM. I'm joined by no other than Sophina Khan, who's taken time out from her busy schedule because she's actually working at the moment as an advanced aesthetics practitioner in her own state-of-the-art clinic. Now, she's also a qualified cardiology nurse. She's a blogger, makeup artist, successful entrepreneur, mother of 5 people, mother of 5. Just take note of that. Now, what's interesting, Sophina, is like you told me that's how people recognize you, mother of 5. Forget everything else, mother of 5.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Sophina, you've got 5 kids. Okay. Yep, that's me.
And but it's interesting, isn't it? You can achieve as much as you possibly want, but the fact that you have 5 children is what stands out more. Why is that, Sophina? Why is it that people kind of get quite their jaws drop when they see you? Because mashallah, you've really maintained yourself and successful in the industry that you're in as well. How have you been able to have that balance?
I think it's just purely down to for me, my motto is option is not a failure. So failure is not an option. I can't even think straight. So failure is not an option. And I've taught my kids that as well. Okay. So if I want to set a task, if there's anything that I'm thinking, right, okay, I need to do this, I have to do it. It's just a case of, it can't be lip service. It has to be followed with action. Wow. It has to be executed and done, ticked off. So that was, from everything from starting my career as a nurse, as a makeup artist, up to doing the academy, going into aesthetics, creating the makeup line, the brushes, the lashes, whatnot. And then we've got some more plans ahead, inshallah. So, yeah, there will be some more things to come.
Goodness me, that's like a little empire. And I understand you're opening 8 other clinics. Now, for anybody who's not familiar with advanced aesthetics practitioning, what does that actually mean?
So the word aesthetics is just about how things look. So we do medical and aesthetics at the clinic. So in terms of aesthetics work, you have things like laser hair removal, dermal fillers, Botox, fat dissolving injections, skin peels for pigmentation, everything and anything you can think of. Then we do the medical side of things and the holistic side of things, which is sports therapy, rehabilitation for athlete injuries, hydrocolonic therapies. We treat acne, rosacea, melasma, all these type of things. So the list is endless.
It's quite an intense process that lots of treatments there.
We have, we've trained thoroughly, myself and the staff have, to make sure that we can just deliver everything safely, effectively. Everyone's all registered professionals, so, they're in safe hands as well.
Mashallah.
So that's the main thing.
Now, on today's show, we've been talking about International Girl Child Day, and this was marked last week. I want to ask you, Sophina, what does a day like that mean? You're a mother of 1 daughter. You've got, mashallah, 4 sons, and you're successful in your own right. What advice would you give maybe to your younger self or to listeners listening in?
Daughters are everything, literally everything. I waited 14 years,
Subhanallah.
5 pregnancies for my daughter. Alhamdulillah, she came. I prayed long and hard for her. And love your daughters, treat them with so much love and affection, but also, have your boundaries with them. So it's a case of just having a really nice balance with them. Be their friend, be their mother, be their father, be everything to them so that they feel that they can turn to you rather than turn anywhere else. Because our daughters will get to a point in life where they are going to be exposed to the world, and the last thing you'd want is for your daughter to be vulnerable because she's at risk of being exploited.
Right.
So it's really, really important to keep your daughter's self-esteem and self-confidence, so that she loves herself and she knows she's got a good family support network around her, so that she can just, she can have an amazing life and
mashallah.
Just be loved and respected, and it's mutual with your sons as well.
Definitely. Communication is key here. And communicating in different languages. We're also talking about mother tongue. Do your children speak? Because you're Afghan and your husband's from Lahore, I understand.
Yeah. I can't even speak Pashto myself, which is such a shame.
So what language are the children speaking? Is it English or?
Unfortunately, it is, yeah. But I have said to the boys, they're in high school now, I have asked them to complete a GCSE in Urdu, which will really help them at least have one language which can be kind of used. At least if they know Urdu, all the other dialects are from Urdu, so they will kind of have an understanding. So hopefully, inshallah, I do want them speaking Urdu and possibly Arabic as well.
Fantastic. Now, last question. Do you know the Urdu word for watermelon?
Tarboos.
Hey, yes, you got it right, people.
I can fully speak Urdu. I sat a GCSE in school, so
Check you out.
I read, write, speak Urdu completely fine. It's just Pashto, and I really wish Dad taught me the language. But,
bless you. Thank you so very much, Sophina, for joining us. I'm going to have to say alvida. Have a beautiful day and have a tarbuza on me.
Oh, I'd love it. I love tarbuza. It's great. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. That was the absolutely awesome Sophina Khan. Sophina Artistry, magnificent woman, wasn't she? Join me straight after the break, where I'm joined by another absolutely awesome guest, no other than Taimur Rehman. Assalamu alaikum.
This is Inspire FM, with you 24 hours a day. Inspire. Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Cube with Sister Shamiza.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum. It's 11:30 exactly, Monday 14th of October, and we're on the final half an hour of the Urban Cube show with me, Shamiza, on Inspire FM 105.1 FM. Now, if you've missed any of the conversations with our fantastic guests this morning, all the way from London, Oxford and Birmingham, you can catch the repeat at 8 p.m. this evening. Today's show has been a real celebration of language and empowerment of language. It's been a tremendous pleasure speaking to some phenomenal guests, sharing their journey, where language hasn't been a hindrance, even if English has been their second language. It has enabled them to be the success stories that they are, from being a successful author and television presenter, going on to studying a PhD research at Oxford University, running a successful clinic, being a cardiac nurse, being a mother of 5 children, and a successful blogger. These 3 women have been a real celebration of the fact that language, even though their English wasn't their first language, they were taught their mother tongue. They've gone on to achieve tremendous things. It's been an absolute pleasure having Masarat Alahi, Aleena Din, and Sophina Khan on the show this morning, and they really helped me celebrate International Girl Child Day as well. But it doesn't stop there, guys, because I'm joined by another absolutely phenomenal guest who's going to be talking to us in depth about the lost art form of the Urdu language. Yes, believe it or not, guys, we might be talking about encouraging the language in our homes, but actually, interestingly, it seems to be even a lost art form in Pakistan. I find that really, really intriguing. But we will hear a lot more in depth by this remarkable gentleman who's joining us on the show this morning. And his name is no other than Taimur Rehman. Taimur is also known as Qasid. Now, he is an internationally celebrated Urdu literature, poetry narrator and writer from Pakistan, who's reviving the lost art form of the Urdu language. Now, he made his first public appearance way back in 2012. Since then, Taimur has performed at the South Asian Literature Festival in London, the Fairs International Festival, University College London, Oxford University, Bradford University. He's even been performing at five TEDx events, Islamabad Literature Festival, the Children Literature Festival, and many others, even the Jashn-e-Urdu in Dubai. In his own words, my day job is for 8 hours, but Urdu is an addiction, 24/7. And believe it or not, guys, Taimur also holds the honour of being endorsed by the legendary Oscar winner lyricist Gulzar for his work. Apart from narrating poetry and prose written by others, Taimur writes as well, and not to forget, has a passion for composing and singing poetry. Now, it doesn't just stop there, guys. He's also a creative that's actually taken the actual art form of poetry and placed it on fabric as a chadar called an orni. You want to hear more? So do I. It's no other than Taimur Rehman on the line this morning. Assalamu alaikum, Taimur.
Walaikum assalam, Shamiza. How are you?
I'm very well. And we've been having a bit of a giggle on the show this morning because we've been asking people to give us their translation for the Urdu version of the fruit watermelon. I want to ask you, how in tune are you with your fruit, and what's the translation for watermelon?
For watermelon, it's tarboos.
And you said it with the correct pronunciation as well. That's awesome. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning. And I believe that we're speaking to you all the way from London.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you very much for having me over the show. It's an absolute delight to be here.
Bless you. So we're not speaking to you from Pakistan. It is actually in London. What's the weather like in London this morning?
It's pretty gloomy. It's been a bit cold and windy, and it's like rain this morning. Yeah.
Now, is it the perfect setting for some shahiri?
It is actually, yes. For me, this is the perfect weather to write something.
And writing is definitely a passion of yours, which I've been able to share with our listeners. So it's absolutely tremendous that you're on the show. And I'm somebody that at a later stage of my life, I've been really kind of navigating and being drawn to the poetry of people like Faiz Ahmed Faiz as one, and Ghalib as another, and kind of really understanding the beautiful poetry and the words. But that's come with a little bit of maturity. Now, you're somebody that's kind of in the heart of this beautiful poetry, but it's interesting that in your bio we talk about it as being a lost art form, and that surprises me, especially that you've come from Pakistan.
I'm sorry, I didn't get there.
So the fact that Urdu is being considered a lost art form in Pakistan.
That's right.
And how have you been able to kind of conclude that? What is it that's happening in Pakistan that we're not celebrating the Urdu language as much?
Well, to be honest with you, Shemaira, in Pakistan, in this very moment, I love foremost, I just say this very, put it out there, that I love all the languages, and I have nothing against any language in the world. In Pakistan, I think English has taken over because it has now been understood that English is the language in order to survive. Well, that is right if you really want to compete with the West, and if you really want to, if not only compete, if you really want to stand beside the West, you need to understand that language. But I've realized over the last few years that even if you do not own your own language, people don't even listen to you. You really have to own your own language. And in Pakistan, people are actually getting away from Urdu. So my job is to actually reconnect the youth, the children, and connect them with the language. And it's so difficult. It's such a task to actually start giving books to people because the concept of reading is no more there.
Oh wow!
So I thought, why rather than giving books to people because they don't have time or they don't have the acumen towards book reading, why shouldn't I start reading something from the book? And if it sounds pleasing to the ears, then they might come to the books and they might return to books.
That is such a wonderful way of enticing people to kind of pick up a book. I never thought of it like that. And have you been quite successful in doing so?
So far, yes. I think God's been really kind. Everywhere that I've performed, at the end of my sessions, 3 or 4, 5, 6 boys will come, the boys and girls will come to me and they'll ask me, which book should we pick up? We really want to connect. We really want to read. We never knew Urdu was so, so rich. And I usually what I do is I pick up easy Urdu. I do not start with Ghalib. I don't start with Iqbal. So I read, something which is really understandable, something which is, spoken in your daily routine. And for that, I pick up Ibn Insha, I pick up Mushtaq Ahmed Yusufi, and I pick up humorous pieces because, something which people enjoy. And laughter, they stay with you for a long time.
Yes.
So that is how I address the whole issue.
Now, as a narrator and a writer, then I'm assuming that you're also narrating your own writing, apart from.
Yes, I do.
And where did this desire to write the poetry actually come from?
In order to write, I think the first step is to read. I have read so much. I have read so many poets. I've read so much of literature. And then, I happen to be a very emotional and a very sensitive person. Things which happen around me, they affect me. And that's how, just one fine morning, I just wanted to write something. I just wrote it, fine-tuned it. And that's how it all began, to be honest with you. It wasn't a very considered effort that I had to write. I felt like writing, and I picked up the pen and picked up a piece of paper and started writing. And since then, there's no looking back.
Now, looking back is something you've not had to done. You do. You've been performing across the world, mashallah, and internationally as well as nationally in the UK as well. Some very established festivals. What has the experience been like with the different audiences in senses? Like, how has the Pakistani audience received you in comparison to, say, the British Pakistani audience here?
I tell you, there's this massive appetite for Urdu poetry and literature in Britain. And not only British Pakistanis, but I've seen British Asians connecting to the language.
Right.
And to my surprise, when I was performing in Oxford University, the first row had about 7, 8 Britishers, or I would say white community who did not understand Urdu at all, but they were there. And at the end of the session, they just came to me and said, we had absolutely no idea what you've been talking about. But whatever you said, it made sense. It was very poetic. I really want to know that what you've been saying.
And do you translate the poems for the listeners who don't speak?
Usually I don't.
Right.
Usually I don't. Because I think, once you go to translations, the essence of the writing actually it reduces. And every poem has its own nature, its own taste. So translating is basically, at times it gets difficult.
I think we're losing you a little bit. You may have to come a bit closer to your phone, or speak a little louder, please. Thank you, Taimur.
Can you hear?
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes, you're nice and clear now. Thank you.
Perfect. So yes, I've loved performing for the British Asian community here, and they've always loved it. They've, I've got my Facebook page, and I get some messages every now and then. When are you coming to England again? When are you performing? We really want to come and attend your event. So yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Now, you're known as Qasid, and you've got your social media handle on Instagram and Facebook are what as follows. Do share with us, Taimur. How can people follow you?
Oh, well, my Facebook is .com/Qasid official, which is QASID official. And the word Qasid means, the literal meaning of Qasid is messenger. And my job is to actually bring poetry and literature to people. So I'm basically just playing a role of a messenger, and my Instagram is instagram.com/TREHMANS, So that's my Instagram. Yeah.
Now, your message of the beauty of Urdu is not only through Qasid and your social media, but also on fabric as well, because you have this beautiful, it's known as an orni with Urdu inscribed on it. Tell us a little bit more about this and why you and you actually wear this when you perform.
Yes, I do. Ishmael, to be honest with you, my job, it's a dream actually to make people take pride in their own language, in their own language. And the idea is not only to make people listen to Urdu poetry or read or only write, but start wearing it. And that's when I thought of coming up with the idea of making this shawl, which I called Orni in Urdu. And this shawl is actually got the names of all those poets which I have read while I was growing up, and they've had an influence on my life.
Wow.
And then I made the shawl, and then we had a photo shoot, and I actually brought this photo shoot in public through a photo story. And that photo story was actually based on one of the finest romantic tales of Urdu history between 3 poets, which is actually a true story, between Amrita Pritham, Sahil Luthianvi, and Rose. And that's how I made a photo story, projected these shots on social media, and it was taken so well. So I was not only, I would say marketing my shawl, but I was also marketing the story.
Which was very cleverly done, and it was very intriguing to observe. But it doesn't stop there. I'm assuming you're going to be creating more stories because of the popularity it's received.
I'm actually these days working on another story, another shawl, which is based on Khalid's poetry.
Wow.
And I'm building up a story again, and we're planning a photo shoot. Lots of things in the pipeline. Let's see how it comes up.
Now, I'm sure our listeners are going to be quite intrigued to hear you narrate a Urdu piece. So is there something that you would be kind enough to share with our listeners this morning?
Oh, I would love to. I actually wrote a poem on the partition between India and Pakistan,
Wow.
and it's a very short poem,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes something like, I'll translate it later, which goes, मजहब की बुनियाद पर ये इस टुकड़े का अब बंटवारा हो चुका है। ये भी तय पा गया है कि बादल, बारिश, फूल और बूटे हिंदुस्तानी और पाकिस्तानी होंगे, लेकिन जरा सी चलने वाली हवा से इधर की मिट्टी उधर जो गिरती है धरती पर, इसी कश्मकश में है कि अब उसकी शहरियत क्या होगी, बरसों पुराने टूटे रिश्तों की अब हैसियत क्या होगी, और जमीन की इस तकसीम में आसमान की अहमियत क्या होगी. So,
wow.
That based on your religion, you've actually you went into partition, and now you've also made that uh, these trees and these flowers and the vegetables, and these are going to be Indian and Pakistani. And fair enough that you've divided the land, and how can you divide the sky? Because the sky is the same for everybody.
We all look up at the same sky, don't we? How intriguing. Now, is this the theme that your poetry reflects? Is this what inspires you, sort of the world around you?
Yes, it does. The world around me, everything which is happening around me,
Mm-hmm.
the smallest of the things. Like I wrote a poem on a beggar, and a beggar came to my house in my street in Pakistan. And if you allow me, I'll just
Yes, please go ahead.
So this beggar comes in, and I wrote that कल शाम घर के दरवाजे पर पूरा चुनता एक बूढ़ा आदमी अनगिनत गली दियों की खाक छान थका हारा और मायूस खड़ा घूर रहा था मुझको. मालूम है उसकी खाली आंखों ने क्या पूछा था मुझसे, ये खुदा किस गली में रहता है. This
Wow. The depth, the simplicity and depth, and the fact that it's quite spiritual, and this is what kind of stands out. And the way you pronounce the words, there's such elegance in the pronunciation and the beauty, and this is why Urdu is such a popular language, because of the beauty and the sounds.
Thank you very much. I'm truly, truly humbled.
Wow.
Coming from you, it means a lot.
Oh, bless you, brother. Now, I want to ask you, Taimur, when are we going to hear you perform? You're in the UK at the moment. What have you got planned for the future here? When can people come and hear you perform?
Well, I am in UK, and let's see. I've got a couple of events coming up. We are just in the planning phase right now. I think there will be something coming up in the mid of December.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, somewhere in London and in Yorkshire as well. So yes.
So the Yorkshire too, and now there seems to be quite a strong Mashairi circuit, poetry circuit in Yorkshire at the moment, like the Bradfordshire Literature Festival, and in Leeds as well, where you've had the pleasure of performing in the north. Now, I want to ask you, Taimur, you're also very passionate about humanitarian and social justice, and your work has kind of led you to set up groups and inspiring young people in Pakistan. Why do you feel it was necessary to do that?
That is this is so close to my heart, I tell you. I realize that yes, we are here for a reason, and the reason is to is not only to connect people with the language, but there's much more to it. And I realize that the societal fabric in Pakistan is deteriorating by the day. We are becoming an intolerant nation. We're becoming very impulsive. We're becoming very judgmental, and we stereotype people. And that was that all of these things, they started to make that society very suffocating. And that's when I realized that it's about time to step up and start talking to these people in small pockets and little groups. And I talk about countering violent extremism. I talk about accepting people for whatever they believe in, however they look like. Um, I speak an all-inclusive society. I speak of coexisting. So that's what I do. And to be honest with you, whenever I sleep at night, I get the most peaceful sleep because I feel like, I've actually contributed something. And these boys and girls will come to me and they say, you know what, you've actually changed our lives. You've actually made us think. And that's the best reward. So yeah, I believe that I'm responsible. I have to contribute, and that's why I do this.
Wow. And the contribution has made a massive big impact in many young people's lives, because you've had like residentials where you encourage young people to come forward and kind of really critically think about what they believe peace should mean. And that kind of goes on and feeds into the communities, mashallah. Very successful
That's right.
residential.
And I tell you, that's so true. And I'm so lucky and very fortunate that I actually got the opportunity to join a team of people who were the doers of the society. I have to take a name here that, my friend who actually was spearheading the whole campaign. His name is Ali Hamid. And he was the one who actually, brought me in, and, he gave me a platform. And that's where I actually joined hands with him. And we've done some commendable up in Pakistan, I tell you. We've introduced Pakistan's first peace fellowship, a fellowship. We have created peace talks in Pakistan from all across Pakistan, from the left, from the center, from the right. And we've brought people on the farm. And I tell you, that's such an achievement. But at least I take massive pride in this.
Mashallah, mashallah. And something that your children also will take great pride in, because you are the father of two adorable boys. And what sort of world do you envisage them to be part of?
I wish a very happy world for them. And I think every parent would. But unfortunately, we don't live in such a world. We live in a world which is full of hatred. We live in a world which is full of judgments. I want my children and all other children. These are all our children, regardless of whatever they are and whatever they believe in. I would really want them to grow up in a society which lifts them, which gives them wings, and they can fly, and they can have their opinions, and they can say things, and they can live their dreams. The only thing as a parent which I can do and give my children a good set of values, good education, wings to fly.
Mashallah.
And I would request every parent to do that.
Now, art and poetry and language and creativity for many is like a universal language, and it brings people together. What tips could you give to people if they want to kind of nurture the art form of Urdu poetry? And where does one start?
Well, in order to start, be it any poetry, be it Urdu, be it English, or be it Punjabi, be it Bengali, whatever, I think the first thing we need to do is to read. And then we've got to read like really well. And we've got to read, different writers with different backgrounds and different beliefs, different mindsets. So I have read Manto, I have read Iqbal. Both of them are poles apart. Manto was extremely liberal. Iqbal was liberal as well, but then he also had a certain inclination towards the right. So, you've got to read first. And once you read, that's when, you open up your mind, and, you start looking at things in a different manner, in a different fashion. I think you just, pick up a book, read any book. The first challenge for British Asians right now is that to not understand the Urdu manuscript. So, in order to get over that, you should just start reading in Roman Urdu, maybe. And that's the first step.
And Roman Urdu is like the English.
That's right.
Yeah, phonetically.
Urdu written in English words. So that's how they can start. And they can come to my page. I've got so many suggestions there of what they can read if they're a beginner or on a beginner level, what they should be reading.
And do you want to share that page with our listeners?
Yes. So that's facebook.com/Qasid Official, which is QASID official. That's my Facebook page. They can come and we can connect, you can ask me questions. I'm always there to respond. And yeah,
Fabulous.
on the language, I guess.
Wonderful. Now we are heading to the end of the show. It's been an absolute pleasure, Taimur. Thank you so very much for joining us from cold London, rainy London, very British weather. And thank you for sharing those two beautiful pieces that you performed for us on the show today. May your work continue and thrive. And thank you for sharing your love for the revival of Urdu art form and poetry.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure being here on your show. You keep up doing the wonderful work you're doing, and I wish you all the very best and keep smiling. You look after yourself.
Thank you so very much.
Everybody who's listening out there, keep smiling and God bless you all.
What wonderful words. Thank you so very much, Taimur. That was Taimur Rehman, and this is Shamiza saying Assalamu alaikum and Allah Hafiz, and catch the repeat at 8 p.m.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.